Welcome everyone. My name is Rhett McClure. I'm a sociology major here at UNF, and I'm currently finishing up my junior year. The goal of my project is to show how anarchism is relevant for sociological research. And for those not in sociology, my goal is to get you interested enough to want to learn more about the topic yourself, and maybe find ways that anarchism relates to your own field of study or expertise. Now, to show how anarchism is relevant to academic study, I knew that I needed to make sure that the question guiding my research was as comprehensive as possible. So I decided to break my research question into three parts, or three questions. One, why do individuals identify as anarchists? Two, how do they define anarchism? And three, how do anarchists navigate their roles as activists? Or in other words, what are they doing in the real world, or how are they changing the world through anarchism? Now I'm sure many of you are wondering, well, what is anarchism? And I promise we'll get to that question very shortly, but before I talk about what anarchism is, I'd like to give you a little brief background about myself and talk about the methods I use to conduct the study. Oh, right there, okay. So I myself identify as an anarchist, and I have for over a decade. I'm also a member of a few anarchist organizations, which is what gave me access to my participants. I conducted 5 face-to-face interviews with individuals that either identified as anarchists or are members of an anarchist organization. Participants were between the ages of 20 and 40. 4 are members of a mutual aid organization. 4 are members of an anarchist coalition. I'm doing bad on the slides.
Yeah, it went backwards because you probably hit the...
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yep.
To confuse everyone. So 4 are members of a mutual aid organization. 4 are members of an anarchist coalition group. 2 are members of an anarcho-punk band. 4 of the participants were male at birth. 1 transitioned to male later in life. 3 are white. 1 is black, and 1 is Latino. For my interviews, I created a list of 14 questions to ask participants, and I used probing questions to uncover a deeper understanding of their perspectives. I improvised my list of questions in the order I asked them in to fit the flow of each unique conversation. The interviewer role that I took on was the role of a miner, and as the miner, my goal was to stay as objective as possible while using these probes to discover as much information as I could. So to save time, I won't go too deep into the details of my analysis, though I will answer any questions about it if anyone has any more at the end. I do want to tell you that my thematic codes that I created for this project are mostly in the participants' own words, which is also known as in vivo coding. I then use these codes as a guide for my sociological analysis and as the titles of my subsections. With that out of the way, let's get into what I uncovered. I decided to present this section first on how participants defined anarchism, first to clear up some misunderstanding that surrounds the topic. Each participant talked about how anarchism is honestly misunderstood and how it is intentionally misrepresented. And this first quote by Peter at the top really sums up one of anarchism's biggest misrepresentations. Many of you have probably heard of anarchism being described as synonymous with chaos, disorder, violence, window smashers, bomb throwers, or every man for himself. Well, the way that these participants explain what anarchism means to them could be described as the exact opposite of all that. And if you want to know what system can be described as every man for himself, it would be the one that we are currently living in. So the word anarchy simply means without ruler. And the word originates from the ancient Greek prefix of an, which means without, combined with the word archos, which means ruler. Anarchia, or anarchy, means without rulers, not without rules. Anarchism is a broad-ranging ideological framework of social affiliation that is unrestricted by law, government, hierarchies of power, and which seeks to maximize individual liberty and freedom through horizontal power structures and decentralized institutions. Now, when I asked the participants why they think anarchism is so misunderstood, they explained that it didn't happen by accident. And I think it's pretty obvious why the ruling class or others would lie to you about it. Now, during my conversation with Enrico, when he was defining anarchism, he brought up the circle A symbol of that anarchists use. And I'm sure many of you have seen something similar to this being represented as the anarchist symbol. That is actually the anarcho-punk adaptation of the original symbol. The original symbol that you see here with the letter A enclosed in a circle represents order without rulers, or order from anarchy. So every participant talked about mutual aid as being core to their conception of anarchism, and they described it as a system of support by and for the community, in a recognition that our individual well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the collective. Now, many of you have probably heard of mutual aid, but you might be wondering how it differs from other forms of aid. Most of the participants compared mutual aid to charity when they described what mutual aid actually is. They told me that the charity paradigm is built on the imposition of hierarchy, where there is a class of people that have and a class of people that have not. And it is the obligation or duty of those that have to give to those that don't. But it's not the obligation of the people that don't have to give to those that have. And so then charity is built on a hierarchical structure that distinguishes people by their material possessions and divides us from uniting in solidarity. The participants said that mutual aid is based on the understanding that as human beings, we all need help. Everyone here has had times where we've had to lean on others for help. And there's no such thing as the self-made man or woman in society. And so through mutual aid, they help each other. Oh my gosh, I'm bad at hitting this. All right. Yeah, so through mutual aid, they help each other because they know that everyone needs help. And the more that we cooperate together in solidarity, the more help that everyone can receive. So instead of a system where we struggle against each other, anarchism is a system where we struggle together. Because the freedom of all is essential to my freedom. This next section could easily fit into the final section of my project that describes what anarchism looks like in the real world, but I thought it was important to help explain how the participants defined anarchism, specifically on the context of mutual aid and solidarity. One form of mutual aid that some of the participants conduct is what's called a share or free market. These shares include hot food, snacks, drinks, clothing, medical supplies, literature, handcrafted goods, or what is also called DIY or do-it-yourself goods, and other important necessities. They also share their technical knowledge in bike repair, sewing, crochet, cooking, and other practical life skills. So these shares are also used as a tool to build connections within the community by asking people what they need and just talking to people. One sad realization that is apparent when they conduct these shares is that many of the people out there tell them that they have absolutely no one to talk to and no one that cares about their well-being. So these participants use these shares as an opportunity to show others who feel alienated from society that there are people out there that genuinely care about them. And all it takes is to have someone just to talk about how their week went, or to talk about their family, or reminisce with them about old memories. Now, anyone is free to come to these mutual aid shares to take whatever it is that they need. And there are all types of people that come out. And there's never a judgment made on whether or not a person needs the things that they take. For example, if a person comes to a share in a Rolls Royce and is wearing a fancy suit and, diamond watch or gold chains, they're just as justified in taking from our share as anyone else. And no one's going to judge them or ask them, do you actually need what they're taking? But most of these people that do come to our share could be considered, other people consider them homeless. Yet they don't call them or consider them homeless people. And when someone comes to the share that appears to be wealthy, they don't call them rich or mansion dwellers. And they also don't call people that appear to be poor or unkept homeless people. They call them our neighbors. The second section of my study analyzes the reasons why the participants identify as anarchists. The participants describe their journey to becoming self-identified anarchists in two different ways. They described how anarchism pulled them into this identity, but they also described their experience of the capitalist economy and governmental authority and how that pushed them to search out and find new ways of organizing society. It is this push that initially began their journeys toward anarchism, and it is this aspect that I focus on in this section of the findings. While talking to the participants about how they were first introduced to the ideas of anarchism, some of them described it as an aha moment, but most of them said it was more of a gradual process. Their experiences began as a gradual disillusionment with capitalism, describing the current state of society as unnatural, irrational, and absurd. They talked about how capitalism and governmental authority blurs or completely blinds our imaginations from conceiving a better way to organize society. Their perceptions of how capitalism and governmental authority limit our views reminded me of Max Weber's concept of the iron cage, which describes the bureaucratization of social order and how it traps us in a web of laws and regulations that traps our social order in this web and limits our individual autonomy in the pursuit of progress and efficiency. Their journeys towards anarchism involved a transition from accepting things the way that they currently are to then questioning why society is organized the way that it is, which eventually led them to take it upon themselves to try and change the aspects of society they viewed as harmful and antithetical to freedom and liberty. It was the participants' initial questioning of society that allowed them to come to the realization that our current way of organizing and associating through competition has become so naturalized it has trapped us in what I've called the copper cage. Their journeys also reminded me of Plato's allegory of the cave, which is a story about the journey from ignorance to knowledge. Because as they continued their journeys toward becoming self-identified anarchists, they became more aware that the bars of the copper cage are not only malleable, but the entire cage could be dismantled and reforged into something that benefits all human beings and not just an elite minority. This last section of my project analyzes the sociological significance of the actions that the participants take in the form of activism, or what they call direct action. They describe direct action as any action that one or more members of a community take to solve a problem without relying on government officials or authoritarian institutions. So this is where the ideas of anarchism get put into practice. So I mentioned earlier that mutual aid shares and free markets are a form of direct action that most of these participants are involved in. And up here is a picture of me at one of those shares. Participants describe the different steps and the coordination involved in making these shares available for the public. It all starts in the gardens, where they grow herbs and vegetables that are used as ingredients in the different cuisines that they cook for their neighbors. Their planning for each share immediately begins after the end of the last one, where a meeting takes place over what went right, what didn't go so well, what they can do to improve the share. They take inventory, find out what things the neighbors are in need of, and a voluntary and horizontal delegation of the work required to conduct the next share. The preparation for these shares involves tending the gardens, planning the meals based on the ingredients available, obtaining donations from the community, and printing out literature, which usually includes little pamphlets known as zines that are usually based around anarchist ideas and theories. All the participants described anarchism as a constant or continual process, both on an individual level and on the societal level. It is a way to allow society to adapt to the changing conditions of our knowledge, tastes, our abilities, and autonomy. They didn't describe it as something being perfect or a utopian society, but more of a constant hands-on project in which anyone who wants to be involved can be, in whatever capacity their passions or unique abilities move them towards. It's a process of finding ways to help each other, because somebody always needs help somewhere. I hope these past 14 minutes have sparked at least a tiny interest in learning more about why anarchism is important to study and why individuals choose to take on the label of anarchist. This is just a small snapshot of my study, and an even smaller snapshot of what anarchism is all about. Just like the ethos of anarchism, my project will never be complete. I will continue to have conversations with other self-identified anarchists to find out what they are doing, why they are doing it, and what led them there. I also plan to find ways of including quantitative data into this project, and I hope to publish this paper in an academic journal to increase our collective knowledge as I increase my own. I want to say thank you to my professors, Dr. Jaffe, the rest aren't in here, but not just for what you've done for me, but what you do for the students and for society. To me, giving away the knowledge that you had to work and sacrifice for to other people is to give away your power, because knowledge is power. And controlling all other variables, that is one of the most anarchist acts a person can do. I also want to shout out to my wife, who's not here, but without her, I swear I would not be here. She held it down, so got to give her props.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Also, I have zines with some quotes and further reading if anyone's interested and just wants a little thing to remind them to look into it.
Thank you. Yeah, pass it on.
I'll pass them around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I have enough for everyone.
I just want to write a couple, I have to write it down or I won't remember.
I was a little flexible on the time.
Yeah.
Since we only have two.
Yeah.
Yeah.